Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome to all of you in the physics online lecture series for class 10th. In this video lecture, we will cover some topics of chapter number 1, that is simple harmonic motion and waves. The topics that are being covered in this video lecture are definition and explanation of damped oscillations, defining wave, and defining and explaining with examples the categories of mechanical waves and electromagnetic waves, and finally the types of mechanical waves, which are transverse waves and longitudinal waves. Damped oscillations. Before defining the damped oscillations, let us take an example of simple pendulum. In our previous lecture, we had already defined the amplitude of simple pendulum, which means that the distance covered by the bob of a simple pendulum to one of the extreme position is known as amplitude. Let's suppose if there will be no frictional forces, then the amplitude of the oscillations or the vibrations remains same or remains constant as it is. But if there are some sort of frictional forces, then the amplitude of the vibration of simple pendulum decreases with time. This is actually explained by damped oscillation. In the figure where the pendulum and the string are with dotted line, the amplitude of the pendulum is greater, but with the passage of time in the left figure, the amplitude decreases. So why this happens? This is explained by the definition and explanation of damped oscillation. So finally we are in a position to define damped oscillation. The oscillations of a system in the presence of some resistive force which causes the decrease in the amplitude of the oscillation are called damped oscillations. The damping progressively reduces the amplitude, which is shown in the figure below. Here in this figure, the displacement was at the extreme positions, but with the passage of time the amplitude decreases, which is shown by a blue line in the form of a sinusoidal wave. Shock absorbers in the automobiles are one of the practical example and application of damped motion. One end of the shock absorber is attached to the car frame, whereas the other end is attached to the car axle. Between these 2 points, there is a piston which is present in a viscous fluid or oil. So whenever a car moves over a jump or a bump on the road, these shock absorbers actually absorb the shock and convert the energy of the vibration into the heat energy of the fluid or the liquid. What is wave motion and how a wave is produced? A wave is a disturbance in the medium which causes the particles of the medium to undergo vibratory motion about their mean position in equal intervals of time. waves plays an important role in our daily life. It is because of waves which carry energy and information to the large distances in a less time. Waves require some oscillation or vibration for their production. Waves only carries energy, but they cannot transport matter. We can't imagine a wave without vibration. There are different types of waves which are going to be explained in the next slides. Basically, there are two types of waves: mechanical waves and the electromagnetic waves. Those waves which require a medium for their production or for their propagation are known as mechanical waves. For example, water waves require water particles for their propagation. Sound waves require air particles for their propagation. And waves produced in the strings and the springs are actually produced because of the presence of the material with which the strings and the springs are made up of. So, mechanical waves are said to be the waves which require a medium for their propagation. Electromagnetic waves are those waves which do not require any medium for their propagation. The examples of electromagnetic waves are radio waves, television waves, X-rays, heat and light waves. These are actually those type of waves which do not require any medium for their propagation. For example, in space there is nothing from which heat and light could propagate. So this is one of the fact that there are a lot of fusion and fission reactions being occurred on the surface of the sun, but we did not get any type of sound from the sun and only get the heat and the light from the sun. This is only because of the presence of the layer of the space between the sun and the earth. Types of mechanical waves. There are basically two types of mechanical waves, which are transverse waves and longitudinal waves. But before going into detail, we must know that what is crust and what is trough. Those parts of the wave which are above the mean position are known as crusts, and those parts of the waves which are below the mean position are called trough. But we must know that on what factors the mechanical waves are divided into two types: the transverse waves and longitudinal waves. So, depending upon the direction of displacement of the medium with respect to the direction of the propagation of the wave itself, mechanical waves are actually classified into two types. Crust and trough of a wave are shown in this picture. So finally we are in a position to define longitudinal waves and transverse waves. In longitudinal waves, the particles of the medium move back and forth along the direction of propagation of wave. For example, the sound waves. In sound waves, there will be compression and refraction along the direction of the propagation of the wave. Transverse waves. In case of transverse waves, the vibratory motion of particles of the medium is perpendicular to the direction of propagation of waves. For example, the waves produced in water. We also know that longitudinal waves move faster through solids than through gases or liquids. Transverse waves move through solids at a speed of less than half of the speed of longitudinal waves. It is because the restoring force exerted during this up and down motion of particles of the medium is less than the restoring force exerted by a back and forth motion of particles of the medium in case of longitudinal waves. So finally, I hope so that all the terms explained in this video lecture are well understood by you. To check your level of understanding